Hello, welcome guys. So we have been talking about how to do the sample web development project, which is address book, and this is our I think fifth or sixth video. So today we have covered the add new view update. Uh, Today we are going to take a little bit complicated example, which is search. Now search, as it's simple, the basic thing is that you enter something and then you query name or email. You query, it gives you addresses. Now one thing extra it does, as you see, as I'm typing, it gives you, just like the way Google instant search works, it gives you what are the possible values which starts with AA. So if you put AM, see, it filters out the results. Now how does it do it? So let me walk you through the code, how it achieves that. So let's see what is when you are calling address, it calls search. So let's go to our search function. So it calls here, comes here. So what it does is really, it first, so when you come here, as you see, it is when you first invoke the page address search, it comes here, it does a query on the address, and then it builds up the name list. So name list meaning the name as val, so that from app unions. So if you look at the SQL, it basically doing a union. It's, if you're not familiar with the union SQL, maybe you can read up, but basically union joins two result sets. So it does a name from the address and joins all those records with email. So at the end of this, you have basically a list of names and emails in one column or row, and then it passes that list, it goes through the list, it builds an array and passes that to the search view. So if you open the search view, so search view has a bunch of plugins at the top, and then it opens the form address search results, so which is basically the form submit method, and then it has simple add. So now if you see here, it is doing something. It has search param autocomplete data. Now what it is doing really is, you are passing the data to the form, and here it is, when the form loads, it goes through that loop and builds up this array. It's basically, okay, you are passing this data. If you come here, I'm passing the data and with this data array with all the in the list of names and emails, and when the page loads, it basically defines a variable data which puts all the values with a split with a split with space. What this means is that it basically, you have this data will have a list of names and emails, each of them separated by a space, and then I'm calling this search param autocomplete data. Now what is search param? It's a field within the form. Let's see what is search param here. So this is search param. Search param is associated with the field. So the way what is going on here is, and if you see, I have got some bunch of plugins, and one of the plugins is autocomplete.css and autocomplete.js. Now both are, this is jQuery, both are jQuery. So these two plugins are used to give you that experience of autocomplete. So the way it works is that when this page loads, this field is associated with a data element which has all the list of values, and as you are typing in, it basically goes through the list and validates it. So that's sort of the way it is done, auto completion. Now one thing is happening is that there are two ways of doing autocomplete. One is what you call, as you are typing in, it does a server-side querying and gets the data from the server. Another is the static autofilling, meaning you when the page loads, you get everything from the database or from your data and store it on the client, and then as you're typing, it fills up. So for example, Google, when you do instant search, it does a server-side autocomplete. Means for as you are typing in, it is constantly going to the server and bringing the results. But here in this case, when the page loads, we get everything from the server, and we don't really go to the server every time you type in. And this works good because our address book is really a small data set. So you really don't have to do dynamic, that's called dynamic autocompletion. And what Google does, where as you're typing in, it's going to the server and doing a dynamic retrieval. What you got is here static retrieval, which works when you have small data set. So in our case, address book, you're probably talking about maximum 300, 400 result set or addresses. So that's good for static autocompletion. So again, to do that is that you attach this to one jQuery autocomplete.css and jQuery autocomplete.js. You might have to add these two also, big frame main and dimension.js, and then you fetch when you load the page, you pass the data, and then you go through it. You populate this variable search param and associate it. So this is basically the code which is doing the associating the search param ID with the data, and then you make sure the search param is attached with your field. That's all. So in terms of the other part of the search, when you put AM, right, and then you do search, so there's just like a regular form submit. So when you search, if you see the form, let's do a Firebug. This is our form ID. It has post action is index PHP address search result. So this particular code, method post action this search result, that is generated through this piece of code. So when you submit it, goes to the search result, and then this is just basic, it gets the value what you wrote. So param has got what you have entered, and then it builds a SQL with a name or email. It puts a % at the beginning of run just to do a like, and then it does a query, and then it sends the result to the list view with the data. And list view, if you see, as long as you call list view with the data, it will populate that data. So we are reusing the list view instead of writing another page. So this is an advantage of having model view control approach, where you can, instead of duplicating HTML in different programs, you can call the same view multiple times. So just like the list view is called here, and also in some other place where we are here. So I think that gives you a good idea about the advantages of model view controller and also how this happens. So we have gone through, I think, most of the features here. And the last feature which is left is print customer list customer one. So let's see how that happens. So when you click here, as you see the URL, we have a cast one, and what this happens is the code, it looks at the URL and it changes the CSS. So let's see how it happens. So we call print all function with a parameter cast one. So it goes to the address.php again, and then it calls print all, and as you see here, print all, and then it loads the model address model and does a get all. So if you go to here, it does a select start from address. So then the question is, where does this coloration happens? So let's look at the list all view. So if you see in the list of all view at the top, there is some code which says this.uri segment 3 style.css. So what that does is that this style.3, this is a code igniter function call segment 3 does is that it gets the segment third one of the URL. That means 1, 2, 3. That means it gets cast 1. And then if this is cast 1, and then cast1 slash styles.css. So basically this code is responsible to retrieve cast1 CSS which is meant for at the cast1 location. So this gets replaced with cast1. So when this code executes, it looks like this: CSS cast1 styles.css. So if you see here, it goes to this folder, CSS folder, which is here, CSS cast1. So it retrieves this style1.css. So in the style1.css, you have so let's go back to Firebug and see this one. This style1.css is blue color, blue background color blue, because you're retrieving this one, background color blue, which is now for cast2 it will retrieve cast2.css which has cast2.css which has the background color yellow. So just like the way I'm parsing the URL in the view using a code igniter call and retrieving a different CSS. So I hope that completes that gives you understanding of how this are handled. So we have that completes our web the address book project, and we have gone through jQuery, we've gone through CSS, we've gone through Blueprint, we've gone through MySQL, how this handles. So that's pretty much it, and hopefully you'll have a good understanding of how to develop web applications and how to really tie back all the pieces. If you develop this project yourself, that will give you good confidence, and try to use all the elements. We could have written one program to do all that, but instead of we separate out in different parts, having this approach allows you to extend this project to much bigger level instead of rewriting it. So thank you.